Welcome to Awesome Movie Year, the podcast where we look back at an awesome year for movies, which is every year. My name is Josh Bell, film critic and writer, and I am joined by...
I'm Jason Harris, filmmaker, comedian, and the people's choice.
For what exactly?
Ask the people.
Okay. We are talking in this season of Awesome Movie Year about the year 1994. And in this episode, we are talking about the Best Picture winner at the Oscars, the juggernaut, as Jason called it, Forrest Gump.
Yes, Forrest Gump, Dave. Have you ever heard of it?
I
He
think
has
so.
not. Our producer Dave has never heard of it.
He's going to do some research on what is Forrest Gump.
This is why we hired him.
Yeah. So Forrest Gump, a huge, not only the Best Picture winner, but also a massive box office success, which of course is not always the case with Oscar winners. It made $329 million in North America. And contrary to what I insisted in our episode on The Lion King, was in fact the highest grossing film of 1994 in North America.
Victory has come to me 9 episodes later, people.
Yeah,
I have been proven correct.
This whole podcast is a lie then. What's going on here with that?
Wait a second.
Well,
can you say you were wrong again?
I was wrong about that, yes.
That felt so good.
All right. But yeah, the reason we talked about The Lion King in that episode is because The Lion King was the highest grossing film worldwide. But Forrest Gump made $677 million worldwide, and it was second only to The Lion King. So it made a lot of money.
But as you pointed out, it made more money in North America than The Lion King.
That it did. But of course, we would not have used it for our box office episode because that would have been redundant.
We would not have, but I just wanted the audience to know yet again, I was right.
You were
wrong.
right. That is correct. I misread Wikipedia, which of course is a...
Don't blame Wikipedia.
No. The Wikipedia had the correct info. I'm not blaming it. I'm blaming my lack of attention to what Wikipedia was telling me.
Yeah. When the AIs come to kill you, blame yourself, bro.
I will. That was dark very quickly. So award-wise, of course, it won Best Picture at the Oscars, where it was nominated for 13 awards and won 6 of them. In addition to Best Picture, it won Best Actor for Tom Hanks, Best Director for Robert Zemeckis, Best Editing, Best Visual Effects, and Best Adapted Screenplay. It also won the equivalent of Best Picture at the Golden Globes, the Directors Guild Awards, the Producers Guild Awards, and Jason's favorite award show, the People's Choice Awards.
I do not watch the People's Choice Awards.
But you are the People's Choice.
I think it's because they know I've rebuked them.
Sort of an abusive relationship that you have with the people.
It's like the Groucho Marx saying, any club that wants me, I don't want to be a part of.
Uh-huh. So yeah, this was based on the novel by Winston Groom, directed by Robert Zemeckis. It's a historical epic, I guess we could say. And it was very well reviewed, in addition to all the awards and all the money. Siskel and Ebert gave it 2 thumbs up. And here's some stuff that Roger Ebert said. This is not a heartwarming story about a mentally retarded man. That cubbyhole is much too small and limiting for Forrest Gump. The movie is more of a meditation on our times, as seen through the eyes of a man who lacks cynicism and takes things for exactly what they are. Watch him carefully, and you will understand why some people are criticized for being too clever by half. Forrest is clever, but just exactly enough. He also said, eventually it becomes clear that between them, Forrest and Jenny, his love interest played by Robin Wright, have covered all of the landmarks of our recent cultural history, and the accommodation they arrive at in the end is like a dream of reconciliation for our society. What a magical movie. So Ebert liked this one a lot.
You know what I got to say is reading it, I came across another kind of idea that matches that, which is that people of that generation who lived through the 60s and 70s, this was their nostalgia painted view back of them, like, oh, look at all the good times we had, and they were able to look back at everything, even protesting wars as like, the good fun that we had. Forrest Gump kind of was that kind of generation that forgot their soul.
Yes, and I think that is very true, and that is an idea that has come up more over time. But even at the time, and I think the other reviews that I'm going to mention here get to that a little bit. Todd McCarthy in Variety said, called this a picaresque story of a simpleton's charmed odyssey through 30 years of tumultuous American history. Forrest Gump is whimsy with a strong cultural spine, elegantly made and winningly acted by Tom Hanks in his first outing since his Oscar-winning Philadelphia performance. Robert Zemeckis' technically dazzling new film is also shrewdly packaged to hit baby boomers where they live.
And it was technically dazzling. I'll agree with that.
Yeah, it was in 1994 technically.
I still think all those effects held up.
Yeah, we can talk about that. And I did want to get a more negative view here from Owen Gleiberman in Entertainment Weekly, who says, Forrest Gump is at once a fable of American innocence and perseverance and a technically amazing pop stunt. It is also glib, shallow, and monotonous, a movie that spends so much time sanctifying its hero that despite his, quote, innocence, he ends up seeming about as vulnerable as Superman. The movie reduces the tumult of the last few decades to a virtual reality theme park, a baby boomer version of Disney's America. And I'm kind of with him, honestly.
That's interesting that they used virtual reality back in, when did this come out?
1990. When did this come out, Dave? What year is our whole podcast about?
That's our great producer, Dave Rosen. Yet again, on fire.
What movie were we talking about?
Dave, virtual reality virtuoso, who's made a number of music videos in virtual reality.
I'm not a virtuoso of much of anything, quite frankly.
Well, I'm trying to compliment you here after insulting you.
Yes, thank you.
But yeah, it is a little odd that they use that. But of course, he uses it not really to reference the way we talk about virtual reality now, but he just means a virtual representation
Putting
of
the
reality.
bloom back on that rose, baby.
This did also get an A+ from Cinema Score, which is the audience polling service. And that's a really rare thing. That means everyone who saw this movie loved it.
That's the people's choice, baby.
It was the people's choice. I did not like this movie when I saw it in 1994, and I still don't like it. When did you first see it?
I also saw it in the theater with my brother and my parents back in the Jersey days, and I did like it back then.
Yeah.
So I was worried going into it if I would still like it, but we will get to that.
We will. Yeah, I didn't see it in the theater. I think I saw it on home video with a friend of mine. And I remember, I think we were talking about this at one point before, that there was this very antagonistic relationship set up probably in the media between this movie and Pulp Fiction. Like you could only like one of them and they were pitted against each other. And I loved Pulp Fiction so much that I think going into this movie, I was like, oh, screw this movie. It's no Pulp Fiction. And that kind of was how I felt.
Well, it is no Pulp Fiction.
Right.
Because that would be really weird if he was a hitman in Los Angeles.
Would have loved to see Forrest Gump teaming up with Jules and Vincent Vega. Maybe that would have been something different.
That could have been
a crossover of some kind.
Maybe the ill-fated sequel that had been talked about for years afterwards.
Yes. So that's a bit of background on Forrest Gump. Is there any other tidbits that you found?
I mean, well, yeah, the soundtrack sold 12 billion copies, which is pretty interesting because it's really just like a greatest hits, compilation of American youth throughout the 60s and 70s, I'd say.
Right. And I think that what you said there is exactly the reason that it sold all. I'm pretty sure my mom still has like the double CD of the Forrest Gump soundtrack somewhere in her house.
Few other quick things. Spent 42 weeks in the theaters, which today would be impossible.
Right.
Number one for 10 weeks. Is 78.5 million tickets sold in the US alone. Pretty incredible.
This movie was, I think we forget how popular this movie was, in addition to just being, an award winner.
Right. And then we talked about that with The Lion King. Like these two were both omnipresent. They were everywhere and everything. And,
and Forrest Gump as like a pop culture figure was everywhere. And his dumb catchphrases and his accent and all of that was all over the place. I'm sure there were a bunch of Saturday Night Live sketches and things like that. Which I totally did not look up, but it was all over pop culture.
It was, and I think you have already let the audience know with some foreshadowing how you felt about it. But
Yes, but we can talk more about our general feeling and analysis of Forrest Gump when we come back. Welcome back to Awesome Movie Year and our debut season on the films of 1994.
You hear that, Dave? 1994.
Loud and clear.
In this episode, we're talking about the Best Picture winner, Forrest Gump. I hate this movie. I'm just going to say that right out in front. I fucking hate this movie.
Oh, I did find one quote that I wrote down from you from the Palo Alto Weekly. From
Okay, yes.
Mark Vincente. Gump is a pitiful stooge taking the pie of life in the face, thoughtfully licking his fingers.
Is that a positive or a negative review? I'm not even sure.
I just thought it would fit it. I knew you going in, you were not going to enjoy this one.
Yeah. I see, like I said, I saw it in 1994 and I didn't like it then, but I do remember having this attitude of like a sort of a chip on my shoulder going in like, oh, I can't possibly like this movie because it's going to get Pulp Fiction or whatever. And I love Pulp Fiction so much. And so going in this time, I thought, okay, that feeling has faded, obviously.
Yeah. Those two films have made peace with each other.
Yeah. They're not being pitted against each other at every award show or in different articles or whatever. I could like both of them if I do. And I think the first minute of this movie, I was like, oh wait, no, I fucking hate it.
You are Dave. Maybe we have to put the explicit language warning on this.
I'm sorry for my forceful.
Not used to this as a guy from Jersey.
No,
I'm usually the one with
such language.
But I'll say this: first 15 minutes, I was really worried this time around. I have not seen it since I saw it in the theater, and I was, as far as I remember, anyway. I was really worried because it is very sentimental and cheeky, and everything. And but it grew on me, and I liked it. I still like it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Which is probably good for the podcast.
Yeah, no, it's good for us to have a disagreement, lively discussion. But yeah, and things in this movie that I thought I like Tom Hanks. Man, did I not like Tom Hanks in this movie. Forrest is annoying as hell.
He does talk a lot about himself, doesn't he?
He does. That was the first thing. That was what I was saying in the first minute. Like, he's sitting on the bench and this poor lady is minding her own business, reading a magazine. He just starts telling her his entire life story. And I was thinking, like, Forrest is like an example of what we talk about now as like, mansplaining or something, where women are trying to mind their own business on public transportation and men invade their space and just start talking.
He talked to men too.
He did later in the movie, yes.
So,
yes.
I mean, I don't think there was any type of misogyny.
No.
That's just
what came to mind. But yeah, it's his ego that he does talk, and like multiple people come and go at the bus stop, and just whoever's there, he just starts talking. And later on, it's like the middle of the story, and they're like, who are you? Who's Bubba? Who's Jenny? Where are we in this story? And he's just babbling on and on about his life.
Right. If you had come in the middle and then been like, and then Bubba died. Like, wait a second, who are you talking about? That was my Forrest Gump, everybody.
That was, I feel like, just as good as Tom Hanks' Forrest Gump.
That is an insult to Tom Hanks, my friend.
And it is. And I love Tom Hanks. Tom Hanks is great. He's a very good actor, a beloved human being. And I just could not stand
American treasure.
He is. Absolutely. I will agree with you on all of those points, but I could not stand the like sing-songy way that he talks in this movie, and the inconsistent characterization of Forrest Gump, who is, I think, like was mentioned in some of those reviews, he's that kind of character who's dumb except when the movie needs him to be insightful. And he never feels remotely real.
What did you like about the movie?
Nothing.
Really? I think it had good music. Come on, man.
I mean, like, yes, but as you were saying, the soundtrack is just the greatest hits of the last 30 years. Like, how hard is that?
Well, I mean, I guess in a way it's not hard, but maybe this strived to do it a little more fully.
Come on, what did you like about it?
I you know what? look, after the first 15, Robin Wright Penn is very good in the movie. So no, nothing
I
on
mean,
that.
Jenny is not a character. She's just a blank slate for Forrest to project and for the movie to project cliches of each era onto her.
I am not going to win this one. So I thought it had a lot of iconic moments, like when they meet back up at the anti-war rally in outside of the Washington Monument, right? That happened. That was a thing.
That did happen, yes.
So that was a big thing. I thought it was very well shot. You got to admit that it was well shot.
I mean, sure, but like, so are lots of movies.
Well, I'm trying to.
It wasn't even Oscar nominated for its cinematography.
Oh, well, excuse me.
It was nominated for everything else. No, it's fine. Yeah, it's perfectly well shot. I mean, it's a large budget Hollywood movie. It's not, you know, there's no boom mics in the frame or whatever.
So you didn't even like the special effects where Forrest Gump is now inserted into real footage with John F. Kennedy or Lyndon Johnson, any of that stuff.
No, I mean, I think
technical wizardry.
Yeah, at the time, yes, that was like an incredibly impressive thing that no one had really been able to do. I feel like now we've gotten used to that sort of thing, and looking at it, you can see the seams a little more. But more than that, like, it's annoying and it doesn't serve a useful purpose. It just turns all of history into this like dumb joke.
He's whimsical. He's got whimsy and fun, and you know. And going back to the rally sequence, I thought that was cool when I was reading about how they did that. They had 1,500 extras, and they just kept moving them around from place to place. And then what he did was make it look like hundreds of thousands of extras based on, you know, technical mapping and everything like that. So I like that. I mean, I don't know. It worked for me. I don't know why I was worried about it, but I was like, yeah, this is fun. I'm with it. I'm good with this. So, I mean, it wasn't my favorite movie of that year, but, you know, maybe the journey. I went with Forrest Gump on that journey from a small town in Alabama to the University of Alabama to Vietnam to being a world-class ping pong player to New York City with Lieutenant Dan. Hey, Gary Sinise is very good.
Okay, I will give you that. Gary Sinise is good in this movie.
You got him.
That is the best. That is probably the best performance. He's the one who feels like he gets some depth to that character.
Yeah, he really does.
Yeah.
And I think, like, you know, as Lieutenant Dan, there's a sequence where he talks about how every a member of his family has died in the battlefield in every American war, and that is what he thought his destiny was, you know. And then Forrest Gump saves him, you know, and whatnot. So he's got this real bitterness that he didn't get to die the way he thought he was supposed to. And his story comes more full circle, I'd say, than any other character in there, of, you know, having to accept his fate and who he becomes and everything.
Yeah, I think so. I feel like Forrest as a character never develops. He's exactly the same throughout the movie. And Jenny isn't really...
What did you want him to develop as, Josh?
Well, I don't know. I'm not going to tell them how to make the movie. I can
I'm
only
just
say
saying,
what
like,
my reaction
okay.
to the movie is.
Well, let's be honest here, right? This is about
okay.
a man
I was going to be dishonest, but all right.
with a mental IQ of 75, right?
Yeah.
So he's borderline mentally retarded, correct? Is that correct? Mentally challenged.
Mentally challenged. Yeah, we did use that word. Ebert used that word, but we probably wouldn't want to use it now.
We don't want to. Guys.
Yeah.
But I mean, you know, if you're looking back at something like Rain Man, you know, with another mentally challenged person, different type of mentally challenged, do you think Rain Man has an arc? I mean,
I've never seen Rain Man, actually.
Well, you're really exposing yourself now. Maybe it was a 87.
I don't know,
probably?
whatever year it was.
So.
But I did see comparisons to Rain Man in some of the reviews that I was looking at.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that Forrest Gump needs to have like the same journey that Lieutenant Dan has, but just because he's mentally challenged doesn't mean, I mean, this whole movie is about how he shouldn't be underestimated and that he's got an emotional inner life just like anyone else does. And yet those emotions never really change. He doesn't seem affected by any of his experiences.
I mean, he's affected by people, right? He's always happy to see Lieutenant Dan, no matter what the circumstances. He's always kind of longing for Jenny. And he even, you know, asks her why she doesn't love him. And he says, I'm not a smart man, but I know what love is. one of the many catchphrases that.
Oh my
caught on.
God, the catchphrases.
So I wrote them all down for you. And then, and then in the end, I think he does change in that all of his energy goes towards taking care of Jenny and then his kid, little Forrest. So, it becomes less about himself and more about taking care of.
But I mean, was
baby Haley Joel Osment?
Yes,
as
Haley
little
Joel
Forrest,
Osment. That was nice to see him.
who was cast off of a Pizza Hut commercial.
Oh, all right. I
Yeah.
did not know that. I would have preferred to watch that. But yeah, I mean, I think the key there is you're saying he always loves Jenny. He's always happy to see Lieutenant Dan. He just has the same reactions to everything.
Lieutenant Dan.
Yeah, you
That's
ain't got
another
no legs.
Hey, that was impressive. Technical
Yes,
wizardry.
that was more impressive. That I think holds up a lot better than the insertion of him into the historical footage. Is that the way that they erase Gary Sinise's legs? That always looks really good. Yeah.
What about Sally Field? I thought she did a nice job as the mother.
I mean, sure, but another character who doesn't have very much to her except to be saintly and for Forrest to look up to. And yeah, of course, Sally Field is a great actress.
I'm just not going to win this one with you. I get it. You didn't like it. So
yeah, well, I mean, it's not about, you don't need to win me over. I mean, you liked it and we have different perspectives.
Well, let's play a little game. Can we play a game?
Oh, good.
Okay. So when researching the film, I don't know if you saw this, but there were other directors, actors, and actresses that were considered for everything, right?
Right. I mean, I didn't note those down, but I did see that was something that happened.
Okay, so let us recast this film with some of these people. The only person I saw as Lieutenant Dan, which we're going to leave as Gary Sinise.
Gary Sinise is good, yeah.
Was Joe Pesci was considered for the role.
Sinise is better.
I think so. I think Pesci would have been too hard-edged, New York gangster. And
yeah, that's not right for it.
Okay, so for Bubba, the other names were David Alan Grier, Ice Cube, and Dave Chappelle.
That's a weird list of people.
Interesting.
Yeah. I don't think
Mykelti Williams did good.
I mean,
did well.
Yeah, he did fine. Again, for what the character is, I think in a lot of cases, it's not even the actor's fault per se. It's just that the way that these characters are conceived and written.
Well, you have to choose one because we're remaking the film.
Okay.
Josh.
No, I would stick with Mykelti Williamson. Although, I mean, maybe if you could cast Dave Chappelle, you could have gotten something improvisationally that would have added to the part, but I don't know.
I thought Mykelti Williamson did very well with what he was given.
Yeah.
So his jokes hit in a way that were natural. You know what I mean? Like he wasn't telling jokes.
Right.
They were situational. And as Bubba, the shrimp lover.
Right.
So,
Right.
Okay. So far, this movie's not coming together well, but here as Jenny, you can choose Nicole Kidman, Demi Moore, or Jodie Foster.
You know what? I would have been interested to see what Jodie Foster did with it, because she would have brought maybe a sort of harder edge to that role.
And you didn't care for Robin Wright?
No, I mean, again, the point isn't that these actors did a bad job. It's that what they're given is just so little to work with.
And I'm going to take Demi Moore because I think that's the strangest casting choice I could make there. So did you, and then, when I'm reading about this is a little aside there.
Mm-hmm.
Did you get that Jenny was a prostitute? I didn't really feel like that.
Was she a prostitute? She was a stripper at one point.
I didn't feel like she came across as a prostitute, but in the reading I was doing, they were talking about how she fell into a life of prostitution.
I don't know. I mean, there's that one scene where she gets that guy to give her a ride or whatever, but I didn't think she was just literally trying to get a ride to get away from Forrest.
Maybe it's clearer in the novel. I don't know.
So. Yeah, well, I think there's a lot of different stuff in the novel.
Yes, he becomes an astronaut and a pro wrestler in the novel.
Right, and you talk about different casting. I don't know if he was considered, but apparently Winston Groom, the author of the novel, envisioned Forrest as being played by John Goodman.
Yeah, that would have been interesting.
Yeah.
The other ones that I had looked up, John Travolta in 94.
That would have been, yeah, but you can see movies where John Travolta plays these kinds of characters and he just does a terrible job. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, no, Michael, he was the angel. Phenomenon,
where he gets the magical powers.
Bill Murray.
That would have been interesting.
Yeah, that would have been interesting to see what he does. Chevy Chase.
Oh, no.
And Sean Penn, who, did
I Am Sam later on.
Did he win for that one? He was great in that movie.
I've never seen that
Sam
either.
was good.
Yeah.
So
No, see, I would have loved if this movie had starred like Bill Murray and Dave Chappelle, it would have been so different.
And the two directors who turned it down were Terry Gilliam and Barry Sonnenfeld. So
yeah,
if you had Terry Gilliam's Forrest Gump with Bill
would be
Murray
and Dave Chappelle, that would have been great. Yeah,
that could have been something. So I'm trying to, get you the rights to remake this.
Yeah. So what you're saying is if this was a completely different movie, I might have liked it.
You might have. I liked it fine, So
right.
Would you accept Joe Pesci then if you got the rest of the package there?
I mean, I just feel like leave it alone. We didn't need this to begin with.
I just want to say that I never until this moment have wanted a movie with Joe Pesci and Ice Cube so bad. That is a great cast.
We mentioned Winston Groom, the guy who wrote the novel. Did you realize none of the people in the Oscar speeches thanked him?
I saw that, yeah, and he got paid like some very small amount for the rights compared to what this movie made.
Right, but then he, settled with them. They gave him a lot of money for the sequel. They were going to make a sequel. Did you know that?
Yeah. I noted that down for our legacy talk. But yeah, there is a sequel novel that Winston Groom wrote.
Right. Maybe we should come back and talk about
All right,
legacy.
Let's do that. We'll come back and talk about the legacy of Forrest Gump. Welcome back to Awesome Movie Year. In our season on the movies of 1994, we are talking about the Best Picture winner, Forrest Gump.
Josh does not like it. Spoiler alert.
Don't. But we can transition or pivot from my dislike of Forrest Gump and talk about the legacy of this movie. And we were just talking about Winston Groom and his sequel that he wrote.
Yeah. And I read about the sequel. Did you read about it at all?
I mean, I didn't read like the plot details of it. I saw that he wrote it. It was a number of years later, I think, that he wrote the sequel.
Oh, it would have been horrible. I mean, basically, they lose all their money. They lose the bubblegum shrimping company, which part of the legacy is
that restaurant.
Over 30 restaurants in real life of it, which I'm sure is the Applebee's of shrimp restaurants.
I think that is absolutely right.
Yeah. So they lose the money. So basically it's an excuse for him to go back on adventures again. And his kid is growing up and like trying to help him, and he's trying to help the kid. But meanwhile, like he and Lieutenant Dan, they find out that, Forrest Gump was let out of the military early, which wouldn't make any sense because he was shot and he would have gotten out anyway, So,
right.
So he has to go back into service, and he and Lieutenant Dan go to I think Iraq, probably in 91.
Is Lieutenant Dan in the military too, even though he has no legs?
Yeah, they go back and he's got the fake legs now. So.
Oh, right. But still.
And I think Lieutenant Dan dies on the battlefield.
Oh, just like he wanted.
All this up.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Jenny appears to him as a ghost in multiple places.
Yeah, yeah.
He marries a German woman at some point in time, and he gets caught up in all those politics again. So,
right, of course.
So they said in the first book that they made him nicer in the movie than he was in the book. And one of the big switches was, hey, we're making him nicer in the movie, and it's become a love story first and an adventure story second. But I wonder if they had made the sequel, that I think they would have had to focus more on the adventures, since you can't have another swooping epic.
Right. I don't know if people would have wanted to see Forrest fall in love with the German lady after they had such attachment to his love for Jenny. But one thing I did read about the book, and now that I recall, is that in the sequel book, Forrest is dealing with the fact that they made a movie about his life.
Right. Yeah, that's where it starts.
Yeah.
He says something like, don't ever let anyone make a movie about your life.
See, and I can totally envision Forrest Gump 2 starring Tom Hanks and him saying that.
Who was going to say run, Forrest, run in this one?
Literally anyone.
But, after 9/11, they all said that the times had changed, and that
they don't want to insert Forrest Gump into footage of the towers coming down,
running and saving people. That's pretty dark, man.
Yeah, I mean, but seriously, is it all that different from what they actually did?
Well, Vietnam is
Vietnam.
A fun, good time that everyone had in the 70s. And so, hey, but they are remaking this movie. Did you know that?
In India.
Yes.
Yeah, I saw that. Is that actually happening? Or I saw that seems like one of those Wikipedia things that it says like, this is set to happen, and somebody wrote that like 10 years ago.
It's called Leal Singh Chadha. And if any of you are fans of Amir Khan, the actor, not the boxer, and the director Advayat Chandan. Please let us know if this is
I
happening.
think Amir Khan is a big star in it.
I've
Yeah.
heard that name
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I think they were trying to make the movie sequel for a while. Eric Roth, is that his name? The screenwriter had written a script.
Yeah.
But I mean, I would imagine that it probably followed on the tone of the original rather than adapting specifically
Right.
everything.
And they said
the
that,
book.
they relooked at it in 2007. I don't think this needs a sequel, but
No.
I wanted to say Eric Roth, man. Dude, that dude had a run in the 90s
Yeah.
and the 2000s. Forrest Gump, The Insider, Munich, Benjamin Button, and last year A Star is Born. So
Oh yeah, those are
he's-
all better movies than this.
few other fun facts about Eric Roth.
Fun facts.
He writes in DOS and he hands in like scripts on DOS paper. you
All
know?
right, like with a dot matrix printer.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
He
yeah.
co-created The Heights. How do you talk to an
Oh
angel?
man, I like that song.
Yeah, and he was scammed by Bertie Madoff. Not that fun.
No, but those are all facts. So I'm glad you mentioned the Bubba Gum Shrimp Company, because I think that's one of the more absurd legacies of this movie and just exemplifies how it's been turned into this silly sanitized commodity in the way it makes history into an amusement park.
Yeah, it is the Disney of movies,
Yeah,
as opposed to Disney,
which is the Disney of movies.
Yeah.
And Tom Hanks too, who, like I said, I like Tom Hanks quite a lot. He won his Oscar for this movie, and as one of those reviews noted, he had previously, in the year before, won an Oscar for Philadelphia, so he won these back-to-back Oscars. And this really, I think, cemented him. Not that he wasn't a big star already, but this movie really cemented him as this guy who always wins Oscars and this sort of like America's dad persona that he has.
And I still like Tom Hanks, and
I do too.
Did he win a third
Probably,
for Saving Private Ryan?
maybe.
Sounds
Dave?
about right.
Yeah.
How
we don't
about
know.
it?
I mean, if he didn't win for that, he would have been nominated, and I think he's been nominated
Like
for a
5
number.
times, yeah.
It's a lot. And,
Yeah.
and people expect now, if Tom Hanks is in a movie, oh, this is a movie that's going to get Oscar nominations.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to go back and watch Road to Perdition again, where he's playing like a gangster, and
Right.
something totally different. And I mean, even Apollo 13 was a kind of a different role for him.
Yeah, that is a great movie. That is a really good historical film starring Tom Hanks that was crowd pleasing.
Well, then, how did you feel about Splash?
I've never seen Splash.
Okay.
He only did win those two, by the way.
Oh, okay.
Nominated a bunch more. too.
Loser,
Yeah.
Yes.
back-to-back Oscars. Way to go,
And
Hanks.
Nothing. Yeah. The special effects, I think,
Big deal.
yeah, they were a huge deal. And even though for me, they look a little shaky now, certainly the idea of combining new footage with archival footage is something that this movie pioneered and that we see a lot now.
Huge in comedy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was a big thing. I think the soundtrack had a lot of influence on other soundtracks going forward.
Yeah. I noticed that when they go to Vietnam and it starts playing Creedence Clearwater.
Fortunate Son, the
Yeah. And that's
anti-Vietnam
such a
song.
cliche now.
Everyone plays that song for weird, like that's the anti-war song, and it's like, some folks are born made to wave the flag, and
Yeah.
it'll be like Brett Favre for Wrangler jeans, and you're like, what? I don't understand what's happening here. But I thought it was effective in this film. But I
Yeah.
agree with you; it has become like an overdone, trope. And everything.
Right. And I guess that was the thing, is watching this movie and all I think of is, oh, that's so overdone, but maybe it wasn't at the time that this was made.
Yeah.
And also kind of related to that stuff, the Vietnam stuff, that maybe not as much when the movie first came out, but in years since, this movie has been interpreted as a conservative, like, rallying cry by a lot of people.
I know. And that's just so I just think that's such a basic, shallow viewpoint and if you had said it in any other way, I don't think they talk about much politics at all in this one, So
Well, I think the point is that that they don't talk about politics, is that this movie presents America as this sort of like a theme park kind of thing, like we
Right.
mentioned, that it's this rosy view of everything.
And I never understood, it's probably, we got to go back to the good old days, like when segregation was around. What good old days are you talking about?
Right.
Maniacs.
But, and I agree with you, but I mean, I think that you could look at, I don't think that anyone involved in the making of this movie meant for it to be a conservative statement. But I do think that you can look at it and take something from it that would support that viewpoint.
Get over yourselves.
But it's certainly something that has been a big part of the legacy, whether we agree with it or not.
Well, I think, the other parts of the legacies are these iconic moments of him carrying Bubba or Lieutenant Dan out of the jungle, and you see the explosion behind him. And we mentioned the Jenny reunion at the Washington Monument, just iconic shots of him running across the country, things like that. And then, of course, all the catchphrases that were ubiquitous, stupid is as stupid does, life is like a box of chocolates. People were saying that stuff for years and everything.
Yeah. The catchphrases, I think I had forgotten how many of them there
were a lot.
And how this movie is like the Borat of its time in terms of catchphrases.
I'm not a smart man. Life was like a box of chocolates. Me and Jenny go together like peas and carrots.
Oh my God. He said that like 5 times during the movie.
Mom always said stupid is as stupid does.
He's going to do every one of them, isn't he?
And that is all I have to say about that.
Well, thank you. Is that it? Is that all you have to say about that?
Yeah, I went through them all at some point.
You saved that one for the last one. It makes sense. That's good.
Yeah, I realize it maybe isn't this movie's fault, but it felt to me like they're trying to turn those into catchphrases, into things that you want to put on a bumper sticker.
Maybe 2 or 3, but I think the movie became so prevalent and so popular and so beloved that some of them just caught on their own.
Yeah, I suppose. And that is something maybe I was so irritated by this movie that I, just like with the music, I started to maybe blame it for things that aren't really, that are the fault of the larger culture that came afterwards.
Man, you got to move on with your life.
I will say, of all the movies we talked about in this season, this was by far the one I liked the least.
And that makes me like it just a little bit more.
I think we forgot to rate it earlier. So do you want to rate it out of 5
well, I'll let you...
severed Lieutenant Dan legs?
5 severed legs. Well, I'll give it, I'm going to give it 4 severed legs. That's, 2 full legs.
Yeah. I'm going to give it 1.5 severed legs out of 5.
I like that you could have easily went with Bubba Gump Shrimp, but you went with the darker way.
Yeah.
So
I will say, knowing that Josh hated it and it was 2 hours and 24 minutes brings me great joy. So.
Well, I've watched many, many, many long movies that I hate. So I can do this all day.
You might have to.
Yeah. So that is Forrest Gump, the Best Picture winner of 1994. And that's this episode of Awesome Movie Year. Find us on social media.
Social media, we are on awesomemovieyear.com, Awesome Movie Year on Facebook and Instagram, Awesome Movie Pod on Twitter. I'm at Jason Harris Comedy on Facebook and Instagram, J Harris Comedy on Twitter, and goforjason.com.
Yes. You can find me at joshbellhateseverything.com, on Facebook at joshbellhateseverything, and on Twitter at signalbleed. And our producer, David Rosen, has his great Piecing It Together podcast.
You can find Piecing It Together on Twitter at PiecingPod and on Facebook, Piecing It Together, and check out our Facebook group, Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces.
Jason, what are we talking about next time?
Next week, we have a very special rewatch of Forrest Gump. We get to watch the movie along with Josh in real time and just hear him complain for 2 hours and 24 minutes.
Put that on the Patreon.
Yeah.
Next week, we are doing a cult classic, and we went through a lot of different choices, and we found what we consider to be an obscure cult classic, which is tough because on the one hand, it's got to be obscure, but on the other hand, it's got to have a cult following. You see, it's diametrically opposed.
Right.
It is an Italian film called Della Morte dell'Amore, aka Cemetery Man.
And I think that'll be another interesting one to talk about. So tune in next time for Cemetery Man. And thank you for listening to Awesome Movie Year.
You should close by saying, and that is all I have to say about that.
Thank you for listening to Awesome Movie Year. Make sure to follow Awesome Movie Year on Facebook, at Awesome Movie Pod on Twitter, and at Awesome Movie Year on Instagram. And if you like the show, review us and rate us with 5 stars on Apple Podcasts.
And all points west.